Hey there, and welcome. So, today we're going to talk about suffering, but we're going way beyond just the simple idea of pain to really unpack a much deeper concept, the Buddhist principle of dukkha. And honestly, it might just change how you think about suffering altogether. You know, when you hear that word suffering, what immediately comes to mind? For a lot of us, it's probably a headache or maybe something bigger like poverty. But is that really what this is all about? The ideas we're exploring today kind of challenge that surface level view. They ask us to consider, what if there's a deeper, more fundamental type of suffering that's just woven into the fabric of our experience?
Okay, so at its core, dukkha is defined as a state that's just difficult to endure. Think of it less like a specific event and more like an underlying condition. It's this general sense of pressure, of conflict, of unease that hits us both physically and mentally. It's almost like a low-level background hum of unsatisfactoriness in life.
To really get our heads around this, we're going to start with the forms of suffering that are the most familiar. The sources break this down into two pretty clear categories that every single one of us experiences in our lives. First, you've got what's called permanent suffering. These are the non-negotiables, the unavoidable realities of being alive. Birth, getting older, sickness, and eventually death. Nobody gets a pass on these. And then there's what's called visiting suffering. This is the stuff that comes and goes. It's the sorrow you feel from a loss, the pain from an injury, the frustration of not getting what you want, or having to be apart from people you love. All right, so we've covered the obvious stuff, but now we get to a much more radical idea. It's the suggestion that even our moments of pure happiness are, in a very subtle way, a form of dukkha. And this brings us to this key concept called the parinoma dukkha, or the suffering of change. The idea is that because even the absolute best moments of our lives are temporary, they actually carry the built-in potential for future suffering, right when they end. That amazing vacation, that perfect meal, that incredible feeling of joy, it's all fleeting. And knowing this, whether we're conscious of it or not, creates a kind of subtle background anxiety. So, if even happiness can be a form of suffering, what in the world ties all of these different experiences together? Well, it turns out they all point back to one central, unifying idea.
This is pretty much the ultimate summary statement from the texts. It's a huge claim that points directly to the root cause of all these different types of dukkha we've been talking about. But what on earth are the 5 aggregates of clinging?
So these are the 5 aggregates. You can think of them as the 5 main components that come together to create our sense of a solid, continuous self. But in reality, they aren't some solid thing. They're just constantly changing processes that we mistake for a permanent me. Let's break them down real quick. Form is easy, that's just our physical body. Feeling is the raw sensation we experience, pleasant, unpleasant, or totally neutral. Perception is the part of our mind that recognizes and slaps labels on things. Mental formations, that's all our thoughts, our biases, our habits, and intentions. And finally, consciousness is simply the basic awareness that experiences the other 4. Okay, and this is the most crucial point of the whole thing. The aggregates themselves aren't the problem. Your body isn't the problem. Your thoughts aren't the problem. The real problem, the root of all dukkha, is our deep, instinctual clinging to these constantly changing processes as if they were some solid, permanent self. It's that grasping, that identification, that belief that this is me and this is mine that creates all the friction and unease. Once you really start to grasp this, it doesn't just redefine suffering. It completely reframes your entire view of what it means to be alive and to experience the world. It's a massive shift in perspective. Let's just sit with that one for a second. This statement from the text is incredibly powerful. It's suggesting that when we look at life from the perspective of a self that's built on clinging to these changing parts, then every single moment of our experience, from the second it starts to the second it ends, is marked by this fundamental condition of dukkha. So that leaves us with this final question. How does everything change when you stop seeing suffering as just an occasional problem, like a bug in the system, and start seeing it as a fundamental condition of a life that's based on clinging? How does that change your approach to difficult times, to moments of joy, and to your very sense of who you are?